Welcome to the Funk MMA Strength and Conditioning Podcast, hosted by Funk Roberts, former professional athlete, certified MMA conditioning coach, and master of metabolic training. Funk is one of the leading conditioning coaches in the martial arts industry today and has a following of over 500,000 combat athletes around the world. His workouts and training principles have been used by many professional fighters, including fighters in the UFC, Bellator, and ONE FC, as well as World Muay Thai champions, Roy kickboxers, and ADCC BJJ champions. Join me in welcoming your host, Funk Roberts.
We are live. Funk MMA Nation. It's the Funkster here, and welcome to episode number 13 of the Funk MMA Strength and Conditioning Podcast. I'm your host, Funk Roberts, and today I'm pumped, super pumped, because I got my boy Eric Wong MMA on the podcast, and we're talking flexibility, mobility, movement, pain elimination, all the things that us as combat athletes and just fitness junkies need to be focusing on, needs to be part of our everyday training. You know, for us, it's we love what we do. We have passion for what we do. I love hitting pads. I love training Muay Thai. I love doing burpees. I love my metabolic workouts. I love being in great shape at my age. But, you know, at 48 years old, and it doesn't matter if I was 48 or 28 or 18. It's just, you know, you want to be healthy. It's not just about going out and smashing pads as hard or sparring as hard or lifting as heavy or, you know, doing crazy workouts. It's about training smart, making sure that you're mobile, making sure that you're flexible, making sure that you're injury free so that we can prolong our training, so that we can continue to do what we're passionate about. You know, you're passionate about martial arts, you're passionate about jiu-jitsu, you're passionate about Muay Thai, you're passionate about MMA, you're passionate about going to the gym, feeling good, getting healthy. And there's nothing worse than not being able to perform or to do what you're passionate about because you're injured or because you're limited. You have these limitations. You know, it sucks, man. It's just, it sucks. I know that for me, I'm an asshole, you know, really not to my wife or anything, but I'm just like, inside. I'm not the same when I'm not able to do what I love to do. When I'm not able to go to the gym and throw down a workout because, you know, my shoulder's injured or, you know, my lower back's injured or what have you. So adding mobility work, adding flexibility work, being more flexible is key. But flexibility is more than just stretching. It's actually the way Eric Wong puts and creates his programs. It's way more than just being in a stretch state, you know, like a static stretch. You got to do more. And he's going to explain the things that you need to do more in order to maximize and ensure that you're actually getting results. Because a lot of times you just do a static stretch. You can do it, you know, I hear people going, oh yeah, I stretch every day, but I'm still tight at the hips or I'm still, you know, got bad knees or whatever it is, because there's a specific way that you need to, I'm going to say stretch in quotations, that will get you results quicker and that will make sure that that you're going to stay flexible, not just, you know, be flexible for that second, but stay there. And, you know, my wife and I, Angela and I, we use a lot of Eric's, specifically his hip flexibility stuff before we train. I've got tight hips. My hips are a lot looser, just from never stretching when I was younger. That's one of the things I wish I did, man. I wish I stretched. I'm focused more on flexibility when I was playing professional beach volleyball some 30 years ago. Oh man, it's like 30 years ago. Well, that's when I started anyway, but you know, I wish I did that and I didn't. And I didn't continue or I didn't add flexibility until now, when I need to, because I want to kick harder. I want to kick higher. I want to have less injuries. I want to move better. I want to, have more power, in my punches and it's all due to flexibility, hip flexibility, and just, movement and mobility. So it's exciting. Like, Eric's going to share some serious knowledge, man. I like Eric because Eric's been in this industry since 2006. So he's been doing, strength and conditioning for fighters since 2006. He's he's been in the UFC cage with a couple of UFC fighters. He'll talk about that too. So, he knows what he's doing, and he's got that kinesiology background. So it's very science-based. But now he's moved and transitioned over to, the mobility side, the movement side, which is, I think, massive for eliminating pain and improving flexibility and performance, strength, everything, power, conditioning is all due to this. And all of us need to take heed in what Eric says and kind of implement it into our training, making sure that every day we touch a little bit. So he's gonna share some knowledge bombs in those regards. He's gonna share some, the 3 best stretches that we should be doing. Or when I say stretch, again, I'm putting them in quotations. All right. So because there's a specific way to stretch that will get you results. So he'll talk about those stretches. He'll talk about some pieces of equipment that would be awesome to have if you had it in your home, that would help with, mobility, with movement, with injury prevention, with dealing with injuries as well. It's not just injury prevention, because some of us have injuries already. How do we negate, or how do we get rid of these injuries? So he'll talk about that. He'll give you a background about, where he started from and his background, so you get an understanding of Eric Wong. But Eric Wong MMA, if you guys don't know who he is, he's been in the game since 2006. He's more the science behind the training, and I am more the workouts. Here's the actual workouts that are proven by, background by science and research, but he actually breaks it down and teaches you, the names and why it works and that sort of thing, which is amazing. I love that. That's what he does, so that I don't have to do it. Anyway, so before we even start this, I want you guys to check out precisionmovement.coach. That's what this podcast is. Sponsored by precisionmovement.coach. That's Eric's site. Check it out, man. That's sort of like one of those sites that you need to bookmark and have, because that's what you're going to start using that site. It's got some great programs. It's hip flexibility program. My wife and I still use it. Shoulder flexibility program, shoulder solution. He's got some other awesome programs there. So honestly, 100% right from the get-go, I want you guys to go there and then listen to this podcast. As usual, this podcast sponsored by FunkMMA.com. Go there, download your 6 free programs to get started. There's sprint programs. We talk about sprinting as well and the importance of sprinting. So it'll all make sense. Go to FunkMMA.com, sprint program, ab program, other programs to get you started. Also, nutrition, the number 4fighters.com. Get our 3 free nutrition programs to get started. And then, guys, please, first of all, I just want to thank you guys for listening to these podcasts. Thank you for downloading these podcasts. Thank you for commenting on these podcasts. It really means the world to me. It's something that, myself and Andy and we've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to bring not only knowledge from myself, but from other professionals and athletes, around the world and in the industry to you guys. That's why I love the internet. That's why I love podcasting, because now we can continue to share more info. So I really am thankful and grateful that you guys are listening to this, and please download the app on iTunes Store. There's the Funk MMA podcast app, iOS app. I'm still trying to figure out how to get an Android app. It's through Spreaker, so it's not really me. It's through Spreaker.com, but you can listen to this on Spreaker.com, iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud. So, but please comment, please rate this, give these 5 rating. The more ratings we have, and the more comments we have, then the better I can get, more people, kind of just more fighters and other professionals look at the podcast and go, okay, this guy's got some people listening. So yeah, I'd love to be on your podcast, because I want to bring you guys like world champions. I am bringing you world champions, but UFC champions and high level coaches and all of the people who, you guys want to hear from. I'm bringing you great people right now, and I've got a massive lineup, but we want more. So your comments, your definitely your likes, and 100% your 5 stars, no matter where you listen to, this would be great. Thank you so much. I'm doing this solo today. Please welcome my boy, and soon to be your boy, if it's not already, Eric Wong, MMA from PrecisionMovement.coach. All right, guys, welcome to the Funk MMA Strength and Conditioning Podcast, episode number 13, lucky number 13. And I'm excited about lucky number 13 because today, as I mentioned to you in the intro, we have good friend, former UFC strength and conditioning coach, and the king of flexibility, movement, and eliminating pain, my boy Eric Wong, Eric MMA. What's up, Eric? How you doing, brother?
Yo, I'm doing good. Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. I'm excited to have you on. I think your knowledge is going to blow people away and help a lot of our listeners, a lot of fighters, a lot of athletes with some of the problems when it comes to injuries and preventing injuries and dealing with injuries and training. So I'm really excited, man. So what's going on? You're outside right now?
Yeah, so if you hear birds chirping or there's a bell, the sharpening guy, he comes around and he drives a van and he rings a bell to let everybody know he's around. But he sharpens your garden tools. He's out right now, so you're probably hearing that.
I guess, being in Toronto, it's also the skate sharpening guy too, right?
Yeah, for sure. He'll sharpen whatever you got. Samurai swords, kitchen knives, doesn't matter. He'll sharpen it.
Awesome. So for people who aren't familiar with you, man, why don't you give us a little background, a little elevator pitch and background on who Eric Wong is?
Cool. So I started off, I guess, like a lot of people in the fitness industry, just being a sports nut growing up, and then went to university for kinesiology. Did 5 years at the University of Waterloo. And then when I graduated, started as a trainer in a commercial gym and did not like that so much. So I was there for like 4 months, and then I was like, I want to do my own thing. So I started my own business, own training business. And then at the time, I guess most relevant to a lot of the listeners, I was training BJJ, and my sensei, Jeff Joslin, he was fighting MMA. So I was like, hey man, you want me to, maybe I could help you out. Strength and conditioning, because he was fighting professionally, had a few fights already. So we got together, started working with him, and I loved it. I loved working with MMA guys because they would do anything. If you say do 10 reps, just bang your head against the wall, they're going to do it. Totally. Versus like the typical population who doesn't like to get up from their chair. So yeah, it was awesome. So I really dove in. Started training MMA guys, a lot of local guys, and I was living in Hamilton at the time, which is about an hour away from here. And just started working with those guys, and then started sharing stuff online because there wasn't at the time. That was like 2006,
wow,
2007. At the time, there weren't that many guys talking about how to train specifically for combat sports from a fitness perspective. Right. So there's like Martin Rooney was around. Yeah. And there's a couple other guys, but that's about it. So so I just started blogging, posting videos, articles, programs, that kind of thing. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started in the MMA world.
Well, you were definitely one of my inspirations for sure. When I started to, when I made the decision to go online and start sharing my stuff, you were 100% inspiration. I loved how, for me, my goal was just to throw workouts. So, so fighters could actually take a workout and use them. But you were more, you had the science behind it and the research and the anatomy and everything and breaking everything down, which I loved. Why did you go that route? Like, was that just natural because of the kinesiology and your background, or?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I've been thinking about that a lot recently, but definitely one is the background. So I had that background, so definitely it just kind of stemmed from that. But also, I kind of have this belief about when you understand something, you can execute better. So I wanted to teach people, the proper names of joints, proper kinesiological terms with respect to movement, like what shoulder flexion is, what shoulder extension is, because when you can get really accurate and describe it and understand it in your own head, I feel that it helps you execute better. So I wanted people to get better results. So I figured, okay, I want to make sure that they understand exactly what they're doing. So then they really buy into it, they do it, and then they get the best results possible.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that as well because I didn't have to do it. So I just push people to, you need the background behind that? Go see Eric Wong MMA, man. He's the king. No, I agree with you 100%. I think that when you understand, you'll be able to execute it better. You understand why it works, what it should be doing as opposed to not be doing. And you really break it down that way, which is great.
Yeah. So, I think also because there's a lot of stuff out there and there's a lot of hype, when you understand it, you don't necessarily fall victim to the hype because you understand, that can't be true because, it's not based on physiological systems of the body. Right. That's just, whatever, they're just making stuff up. So I think empowering people that way helps them not just in the short term get good results, but long term just to understand what they're doing and to do the right things for their lifetime.
For sure. So you did a lot of strength and conditioning. Eric Wong MMA was big for strength and conditioning for fighters. And then with Jeff and with Claude, because you also trained Claude Patrick, you had that UFC experience. What was that like?
It was awesome, man.
Yeah.
It was absolutely awesome. So 2006, I went out with Jeff for his UFC debut. His only UFC fight. Unfortunately, his career was cut short by concussions.
Oh, jeez.
So that really sucked for him. Like, he had a really rough time for about a year and a half dealing with post-concussion syndrome.
Wow.
But he's back. He's healthy now. He's tearing it up on the mat still, doing his thing. But so I went out with him in 2006 to it was a fight night, and it was on a military base. So it was a pretty cool experience. So right out, it was in a hangar. Cage was set up in a hangar. It was all military peeps there. It's all Marines there.
Right.
So that atmosphere right there was there's a lot of testosterone in the air. Let's just put it that way. It's a pretty hyped up atmosphere.
Yeah, I do remember
fighter jets on the outside. What's that?
I remember when UFC used to do that. They used to do a lot of those. They used to do, or at least a few of those, where they would just go to the bases and have those fight nights.
Yeah, it was cool. It was definitely cool. There's fighter jets on just outside, and it was a cool experience. But on the card itself was a stacked card. Looking back on it now, I mean, who's on there? There's Koscheck fought Jeff Joslin. Okay. Diego Sanchez fought. I think he fought Joe Riggs. Yep. There was a bunch of guys on that card. A couple guys are still around, but yeah, it was an awesome card and a lot of fun. I was in the crowd for that one, so just kind of hanging out. But then with Claude Patrick, he fought in Vancouver. It was UFC 15, and I was actually in the corner for that one. And good thing he won, because afterwards got to go into the octagon. It was an awesome experience. Like, hearing the crowd going nuts, hometown crowd, like Canadian. So the crowd was going nuts, and it was a lot of fun.
Do you remember? Okay, so let's just talk about that specific fight, if you remember. Do you remember some of the conditioning that you did with him? Because this was a long time ago. Do you remember some of the things that you needed to work on with him for that fight specifically?
With Claude?
Yeah, with Claude.
With Claude. Okay, so he was traditionally like BJJ grappler. That's what he was really known for.
Yeah.
So I think with a lot of BJJ grapplers, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you got to flow. You're taught not to try to overexert energy and just to be super efficient and use leverage and technique. So for him, it was straight up just grinding, conditioning. that was the most beneficial thing for him. He's already a pretty strong guy, knew how to use his body, so it was just pushing him and working through the energy systems, working up to that fight.
So did you do like more body weight stuff? Did you do a mixture? Did you do sprints? Like what do you remember? I know this is a long time ago, but it's kind of interesting just because, you know, obviously with every fighter is going to be different, but like you said, like with jiu-jitsu athletes, you know, there are some things that you need to make sure that you focus on, because when you're just traditionally jiu-jitsu, you're training different, you know, energy systems, and it's more of a flow where you need to push them into a different type of training in order to get them ready for an MMA fight.
Yeah. So one difference is like a lot more speed type of drills. So fast moving drills, quick, like medicine ball throws, like really quick ones, lighter balls, just moving fast, moving rapidly. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you're flowing, you're kind of moving slow, you're methodical. So I wanted to bring that element to his training. So you can work cardio slow and methodical. I mean, you could do, say, for example, heavier complexes, and it would be, your movements would be slower.
Right.
But so we wanted to work faster movements. So we do really quick sprints, high knee runs, lighter medicine ball tosses, like rapid tosses, side tosses against the wall where you're standing kind of close to the wall and catching it.
Yeah.
So making the cardio or training is conditioning that way. That's one kind of specific element that we added to. I added to his program.
And when you were walking out to the cage, and during that fight, what was that like? I know that you said the feeling was amazing, but like, you know, the walkout and you know, some of the, if you remember how that fight went, what were some of those cues that you needed to throw out to him?
Well, I'm a strength conditioning guy, so I wasn't saying too much other than breathe. Like, I'm not going to get into the details of the technical stuff like this other coach, but yeah, I mean, just staying relaxed. In terms of fighting, like any fighter knows that it's unpredictable. You don't know exactly when you're going to fight. Could be 7 p.m., could be 8 p.m., depends on how things go before you.
Right.
So you've got to kind of plan accordingly. So one of my roles was to ensure that the warm-up started at the right time. Right. So, you know, I'm watching the fight, seeing how they're ending. Okay, we got this much time left. Okay, once the next fight starts, then we should be really getting into the warm-up and prep. So I was watching that, and then I don't know. It's just, at the same time, I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. So like, I'm hanging out in the dressing room. Chuck Liddell's warming up. Hanging out with like Lyoto Machida. Like, it's crazy. So I'm just kind of, you know, trying to focus, but at the same time, it's pretty cool being around these guys that I've been watching for so long. For sure.
And watching them warm up as well is pretty cool too, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So, all right. Okay, so now you've had that. You've got Eric Wong MMA, and you have a transition, I guess. I want to say you have a transition from the outside looking in. It looks like you have a transition from more conditioning based to more, you know, flexibility, injury prevention. What was that transition like? And what was the
midlife crisis?
That way? Midlife crisis. Okay.
Driving around my Corvette. Yeah, totally. So I'd been training combat athletes from like pretty steadily. I've been in that game from about 2006 to 2013.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like my dad, he was an electrician at a steel mill in Hamilton. He worked there for 41 years. So not as long as that, but I was in there for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
But then just my own life circumstances and what I was doing at the time, I wasn't training as many athletes, and I was actually a lot more interested. I got more interested in flexibility, mobility, movement. A lot came just from my own personal experience. Like, I started learning about flexibility, mobility more, movement stuff, and training that stuff more, and just feeling the beneficial effects across the spectrum. Like, speed is improving, strength is improving, power is improving, conditioning is improving because I'm more efficient, not fighting my own body. So I got really into it, and that combined with my kind of personal life transition, wasn't going to fight camps anymore, and it was more about, I had a daughter, so it was more about, feeling good, waking up feeling good, moving, and so I just kind of transitioned to that organically. It wasn't really a conscious decision, like I'm going to stop and then go into this other niche. It was pretty organic. So that's pretty much how it happened.
I think that organic transition was perfect because, strength and conditioning for MMA and for combat athletes is still, as far as I'm concerned, still new in the sense of people understanding what they need to do as an athlete, even as a martial artist, but as an athlete, some of the training you need to do. But one of the things that was missing in that, throughout this evolution has been the flexibility and the mobility and the movement stuff. Like, it's only now starting to take heed because, Conor McGregor was doing all the mobility stuff and movement stuff. And it's now kind of like, now coming to the forefront where people are and fighters and athletes, and just regular folks too, are like, oh, I need to kind of focus a little bit more on this, because the mindset to most fighters is, oh yeah, I'm a little banged up. My shoulder hurts, my knee hurts, my hips are tight, but I just got to work through it. I got to train through it.
Yeah.
But they never like focus on saying, okay, wait a minute, let me just step back and go, shit, if I dealt with this hip, tight hips, I'll be able to, punch harder, kick higher, kick harder, have more flexibility, if I dealt with these shoulders, and so on and so forth. So I know that when you came to the forefront with this, it really made a massive difference,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for sure, it was like the feedback I'd be getting from people was like, yeah, I've had this issue for a while, and 4 weeks, 8 weeks, feeling good now, and now I can do these other things that I thought I'd never be able to do, like squat. Mm-hmm. So if you can't squat, you're missing you can do other things, but you're missing a pretty good tool. Like a squat's a good tool to use to build your strength and power. So now that you can do that, it's gonna benefit these other areas kind of as a side effect of getting more mobility, improving the way you move, better muscle activation patterns, all that kind of thing.
Let's talk about hip flexibility, because I think that was the biggest aha moment for me. For me, when I was training for my fight, I have very tight hips just from playing volleyball and never stretching or never doing any type of mobility work. My hips are extremely tight, especially getting older too. And again, never doing any type of flexibility whatsoever. And, volleyball is more of you're just jumping up and down. You did move side to side, but, the hip flexibility aspect of it was not even, no one ever did anything. So when I was training for my fight, that was one of the things that I had to start focusing on, because kicking for Muay Thai, kicking is huge, punching for the power. What are your thoughts on the hip flexibility? Like, what are some of the key things that you teach with your hip flexibility?
So at first I like to kind of attack it from a lot of different angles. So it's not just about lengthening muscles, but strengthening muscles at end ranges to gain flexibility, because that's a huge principle that you've got to follow.
Yeah.
If you're not building strength at the end range, your neuromuscular system is just going to see that as an unstable range of motion, because you don't have any strength there. So it's just going to tighten you right back up. So you're going to be, you're doing your typical static stretching all the time. You could do it all day, and you're just going to tighten right back up. So you've got to build strength in those key ranges of motion, or in the end ranges of motion.
And how do you do that?
So that's contracting the muscles at the end ranges of motion. So one example is like a contract, relax type stretch. Mm-hmm. So you get into the stretch, you feel that, and then you contract the muscles in that range. So I like to contract as many muscles in that range as I can. So it would be the muscles that are being stretched. So let's say we're doing a hamstring stretch. where you're putting your foot up on a table or a bench or something. You're tilting over. You'd want to contract the hamstrings. So you're strengthening the hamstrings in that end range. You want to contract the muscles opposite to the hamstrings, so the antagonists, they're known as. And those would be, in that case, the quads, more specifically the rectus femoris. That's a 2-joint quad muscle. So you want to strengthen that guy. Then you'd also strengthen the stabilizer muscles. So you could strengthen the rotator muscles in that end range, or just at least activate them. Maybe not strengthen them, but make sure they're active and they know how to function at that end range. So then your neuromuscular system's like, okay, all the muscles that can act at this range are doing their thing. So now we can keep this new range of motion. So that's how I like to address those end ranges and to improve mobility.
Yeah, because again, like you just said, like most people, like for me, it would have been just sticking my foot up on the chair and then kind of just stretching and doing like kind of like a ballet stretch, and that's it. But you know, I do that every day for, you know, a month, and I'm maybe a little bit more flexible, but I'm still not kicking hard. I'm still not. So you're saying at the end of, so once you get into that stretch, then you have to start contracting, you know, the muscles and the antagonist muscles and start doing some rotational stuff. Is that, or stability work, right? While you're in that stretch.
While you're in that end range.
Right.
Yeah. That's totally. Huge. So, and there's other elements there too. You've got to make sure that you're breathing. Right. So if you tense up, you're never going to get the full length of that, the full range of whatever area you're targeting.
Right.
So you've got to relax, you've got to breathe, you've got to look at your alignment because of compensations that can happen. For example, with the hamstring, it can pull your pelvis under and you can round your spine, which makes it seem like you've got greater range of motion, but it's just a compensation at the spine and the pelvis. So ensuring the alignment is ensuring you're in alignment, whatever alignment might be for that particular stretch. So that's super important as well. So different elements you can add to that end range there to make sure that it sticks and it's, you know, flexibility that you can use.
So like when it comes to the hip, I mean, hip flexibility, there's so many benefits for a fighter, like, you know, striking and jiu-jitsu. You know, do you think that that's probably one of the biggest, like if you just opened up or were more flexible in your hip, you would, you know, performance would be better, strength would be better. You think like if you just focused on that specific, that would be sort of a good way to start?
Yeah, hip flexibility is huge because it's so bad in so many people nowadays with all the sitting, the sedentary lifestyles. So if you open that, I mean, that when your hips start working properly and you can move through your hips, that takes a ton of stress away from your knees and your low back. So a lot of people can work hip flexibility and then low back pain disappears, knee pain goes away. You're like, oh, that feels a lot better. And then the reason why is because it's the body compensating. If the hips are tight, movement has to come from somewhere else. So it'll come from the joint above or the joint below. So that would mean the lumbar spine has to start moving. Well, generally speaking, the lumbar spine isn't meant to move through a big range, especially compared to the hips.
Right.
And then you've got these big muscles in the hip, the glutes, especially you got these huge ass glutes.
Yeah, totally.
You know, if you're using these versus your lumbar spine muscles, like your multifidus, which are like the size of a finger, pretty much, then your back's going to be a lot healthier and you're moving the stress to muscles that can handle it.
That's massive, man, because my lower back's been a huge problem for me, and the hip tightness has been a huge problem for me. But I remember when I was doing some of the stretches, I mean, you have a program, hip flexibility program, which I advise every single person who's listening to this to actually grab it. I'll have a link to it as well. But yeah, it's just how you break it up and just explain it, and then just the videos help. Like the one stretch I remember is using the resistance band, and actually my wife uses this to this day and loves it. The resistance band back in like a lunge. It's hard for me to explain it, but back into like a lunge, and then once you get into that sort of the band is kind of pulling your hips and you're pulling against it, then you start doing some scouring, I guess it is, right? Is that,
Yeah.
Oh man, it's like it's and then literally right after I did that, and I do that, especially now because I'm getting back into Muay Thai right now. So that's kind of like Angela and I, that's our go-to pre-training stretch. Man, my hips are way better, much looser, especially as I'm getting older. Usually it's going to go the opposite direction, but that one right there is huge. Like, I love that stretch.
Yeah, that one, I still do that one to this day, and that's effective because of the elements that we talked about earlier, which is the activation, but also when you add the band there, we start to address a pretty big component of hip tightness that a lot of people don't address, which is the joint capsule.
Right.
So the joint capsule is it's basically like a big thick ligament surrounding the joint, the hip joint.
Right.
And when that guy tightens up, then that severely limits movement, severely impacts movement. So if you don't address it, you're not addressing one of the biggest factors that is keeping you tight. So that's why that technique works so well.
And if I'm like tight right now, so people are listening, some people are just tight. Like, is it ever too late to start this process of becoming more flexible in general? But really, if we're talking about the hips, is it ever too late?
Let's see. It might be too late for you. You might as well just go and die. It's over for you, man. It's over for you. No, man. I've got feedback from people in their 70s and 80s,
right,
who are getting results with these kinds of techniques. I mean, anything is better than nothing. So
totally.
If at the very least you do static stretches, do static tread, do something. But when you add these kind of more advanced techniques that are addressing and targeting specific elements that keep people tight, then it just opens up a whole new world. And I like to think of like movement and kind of the aging process as, I don't think of it as chronological. I think of it as ability. So if I'm getting better, if I'm getting more flexible, I'm actually getting younger. Mm-hmm. Because when we're young, that's just the natural state of being, is being flexible. Like, I look at my daughter and she can do anything.
Right.
Like, there's no movement restrictions whatsoever. So yeah, if you're learning, that's another one. Just learning something new, that's getting younger. That's just a sign of youthfulness. So when people are reading, people are using their brains, learning new concepts, ideas, whatever it is, new exercises, that's part of getting younger. So even people at 70, you can still get younger by increasing your ability in whatever domain, any domain.
Yeah, and you know what? I never thought of it like that at all. But it's so true. It just makes sense, especially the ability. Like, you're going to be able to do more, at 70 or 60 or 50 or 40. You know what I mean? As you become more flexible or better movement, or as you're learning, you're just going to be able to do more, and it just kind of enhances, your life.
Yeah, totally. And totally opens up a whole new world.
Absolutely. So here's the thing, but with the hip flexibility, I'm just going to go on this again. Talk about strength. Are we going to be able to become stronger the more flexible we are, especially in the hips?
Yeah. So, I mean, strength will, if you're not fighting yourself, you're going to be stronger. So if you're so tight that you've got to fight yourself to get into a deep squat, for example, then when you loosen that up, it's just you've let go of that excess tension. So you don't have to fight yourself anymore. Same thing with running. Like, if you're sprinting and you have to fight yourself into hip extension every stride, then you loosen that up, that you're no longer fighting yourself, then you just get faster, more efficient. So for sure. And then with the approach of strengthening at end range, you are basically activating muscles that for a lot of people haven't worked for a long time. So once those muscles come online, you're adding their force to whatever movements you're doing as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love it. So precision movement. This is the new baby. I'm getting your emails. I'm loving the emails. I'm loving the blog posts. What's behind precision movement?
Basically, I want precision movement to be the place where active people go if they have any kind of pain, they're recovering from injury, or they have any kind of movement or flexibility restrictions that are holding them back from doing the things they love. That's I want it to be there. Like if somebody gets hurt on the field or in the gym or, sparring, whatever it is, you get a little injury, I want them to think, okay, let me go to precisionmovement.coach and find what to do. Because I think there's a big, I'm not going to say gap, but if you go on Google and you search for, say, an injury, shoulder bursitis or something, there's all these very generic sites that kind of come from the medical complex, like WebMD, that kind of thing, where you'll get some basics behind the injury, but then it's like, go to a physio and you might need surgery. That's pretty much how a lot of these sites end.
Totally.
So what I wanted to do is develop a site where people search that stuff, they find, an article or a blog post or the resources on Precision Movement Coach, and there's you're going to get the background in understandable language, and then there's going to be actionable steps to take, so exercise to do or steps to take to recover from that. That's what I wanted Precision Movement Coach to be.
And that's what I see that it is. I mean, the videos and the information there is great. I like that it's actionable items because, if I have shoulder injury or just shoulder pain, if I have back pain or knee pain or just, the things that are related mostly to, I'm going to talk combat athletes, but I mean, just in general, most people, those are sort of the main pain points, the shoulders, knees, back, and hips, hip tightness.
Yep.
It's great to be able to go here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And a lot of those other sites just like, rest ice, compression, elevation,
Right.
And that's it. But there's so much more we can do. I'm Chinese, so I got enough rice. I want more. So yeah. And the other thing was too is it can be confusing to try to figure out what is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So in the process, I've already developed a couple of assessment tools,
Right.
but I want assessment tools for the whole body, where it's like, okay, your back hurts, start here. Go through the process, and then you can kind of get specific, customized recommendations for whatever it is you're dealing with, as opposed to trying to wade through, okay, here's 5 different conditions. It kind of sounds like this, and it kind of sounds like that one. Which one do I do? So
the self-assessment is going to be massive because, just like you said, you'll go online, you'll get like, okay, I have a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and a little bit of this. So, and you're getting 4 different like remedies for the, because you have a little bit of each one, especially to the layperson who has no clue really what they're even trying to treat. You know what I mean?
Yep, totally.
So if you
can, go ahead.
No, so if you can go and get if you can come out with something that assesses that, then you can kind of say, okay, well, these are all the things that I have according to the assessment. Boom, this is where I should start at least, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's not a quick process to do this, because what I'll do now is I'll create kind of version 1 of an assessment, put it out there to my followers, and then I got to go through the data. So I'm getting like hundreds to thousands of responses to these things, and I'm going through the data and I'm kind of tweaking them, because sometimes I'll create the assessment, but it doesn't always match up as accurately as I want it to.
Right.
Where I'll get feedback from people and I'll kind of ask them a couple more questions, and I'll find out, okay, you actually have this thing, whereas the tool told you you have this thing. So then I got to go in and tweak the assessment and play around with it. But so it's a slow process, but once I've done this process to the different major areas, which, like you mentioned, it's the back, it's the shoulders, it's the hips. Like those are the major areas people have issues with. It's going to be nice, because active people, you're going to hurt yourself sooner, like if you're pushing yourself, you're an active person who likes to kind of push the limits and, get results, then you're going to run into things sooner or later. So it's good to have this resource to be able to test yourself and see what's up.
For sure. And just get like, I just got these 5 best hip stretches. You sent an email out. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Like there was just okay, here are some things that I can actually start to use right away,
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I'm trying to put out a lot of good free content like that, giving people like a few exercises for different things that will give them results quickly.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait and see if this is working or not. It's you do them, and after a week or two, you should be like, okay, this is helping or this is not helping.
So we have a lot of young cats probably listening to this. How important is mobility and flexibility to these athletes? Like, we've got our training that we have to do, skill training. And then we have nutrition we got to take care of. And then we've got, strength and conditioning that we got to take care of. And then we have, everyday, life activities. But how important do you think this needs to be for these athletes?
Yeah, this stuff is all about longevity. So if you want longevity in terms of being injury free, but also longevity in terms of being able to continue to make progress, mobility and movement and getting your body working properly is super important, because you can push and push and push, and if you've got a movement restriction or say a muscle that doesn't fire properly, then your body, like I said, your body's going to compensate and you're going to get injured, and that's going to hamper your results. It's going to take you out from doing the things that you love to do. It's going to suck. Like your life is shitty when you can't train or move.
Totally.
So I'm sure everybody listening to your podcast is an active person. And I'm pretty sure that I could say all of us probably get grumpier when we're not able to train.
100%.
Like my wife tells me that if I'm not working out, I turn into an ass. And she's like, get out of here, go do something.
Yeah.
Go for a run.
Same.
You got to burn off that steam.
Yeah. So how would you implement this? So, you told us that it's important, but how do we implement this? Because this is going to be new to a lot of people. How do we fit this into a weekly schedule?
Yeah. So I'm all about implementation. So the way that I design things personally is I find frequency is more important when it comes to this movement, mobility stuff. Sorry, there's a door being opened right now. So doing it daily, and then when you do it daily, it doesn't have to be that much. If you're doing like 20 minutes a day, that's what I personally do when it comes to flexibility, mobility, movement stuff. Yeah. Specific work, like I'm doing, part of my dynamic warm up before workouts. I consider that non-specific. It's helping me to warm up. Right. But mobility specific stuff, 15 to 20 minutes a day. Just do it daily, and you got to find techniques that you can just do at home.
Right.
So if you got to go anywhere, you got to find all this equipment. It's not going to work. So just movements, techniques that you can do at home. That's what I've really been focusing on, is creating those types of movements and techniques and programs for people where it's like, okay, if you can't do 15 to 20 minutes a day, I can't help you.
You're right.
Like that's not a big ask.
Yeah.
So it's just plug it in. Let's go. 15, 20 minutes, get it done. And it's going to take care of your movement.
For sure. And so what would you think? So if I needed a piece of equipment, what would be your one piece of equipment that you would have that would be the best for movement, mobility? Like if I say, okay, let me grab at least this piece of equipment and it's going to be versatile for me.
Yeah. I would say, that's a good question. Just one piece of, you can't have two pieces of equipment.
Yeah, you can have two.
Come on,
yeah. No, you can have two. 100%
right.
You can have two.
So it would have to be a resistance band.
Yes.
Because you can use it for resistance, pulling, pushing. You could also use it as like kind of a dowel. So we're doing like shoulder dislocates, that kind of thing. So resistance band, and then some kind of soft tissue tool, like a lacrosse ball, or I like a lacrosse ball better than a foam roller.
Okay, why is that?
Foam roller, you can kind of tap out your use of the foam roller if you do it daily, after like 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, you're probably beyond the need you need something to go deeper. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas lacrosse ball, you're really never gonna kind of progress past that in terms of intensity.
Yeah. For sure. Baseball, lacrosse ball, just something hard, right? That will work.
Yeah. Yeah. Small little hard ball. Lacrosse ball is perfect.
Okay.
Some areas, I mean, you can use different types of, like golf ball works for bottom of the feet and like deep in the outside the glutes and stuff like that. But lacrosse ball is pretty good generally.
That's awesome. And when you say resistance band, you mean not the bands with the handles at the end. You're talking the full-on rubber.
Yeah, so the strength band, it's like a loop.
Yeah.
It's about, how long are they? Maybe like 40 inches long.
Yeah, yeah.
So around there. Yeah. That bird is fucking loud.
That bird is so loud.
It's waiting for me to die. It's going to eat my body. Jeez. Anyway.
Well, it keeps everyone feeling like they're outdoors, man. Keeps everyone feeling like they're outdoors.
True.
You use other piece of equipment. You use kettlebells and stuff like that too, like in the mobility stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty non-dogmatic. I'll use anything.
Okay.
And play around with anything. So kettlebells, for mobility stuff particularly, like, I mean, there's exercises that would be considered mobility / strength exercises. Like I just posted actually today, if you search for it on my blog, but the side support get up. It's kind of like a Turkish get up, but it's amazing for hip mobility because we're getting into that end range and we're building strength there. Like we're holding it, we're rotating in and out of that range. It's awesome. But I use a kettlebell like that for that exercise because it's kind of like the Turkish get up. Search that one out, man. You'll love that one.
You know what? I saw it already.
Oh, you saw it? Okay.
I saw it. I loved it. And it's so funny you say this because we had a past guest on who talked about, two of the best exercises for combat athletes, one of them being the Turkish get up. So the fact that now we have sort of another level of Turkish get up with the side, what's it called again?
The side support get up.
Side support get up is amazing because now, once we decide, once we get familiar with the get up and get stronger with the get up, now we're adding that mobility phase to it, which is insane and amazing. So once again, you guys can hear and see that get up is a powerful exercise, not only for strength and core and what have you, but now we're adding mobility into it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great one. And it's one, there's one concept that I definitely want to share about. It's related to that. It just kind of triggered my mind.
Yeah.
But during that technique, so I'll try and describe it in a simple way. So the side support position is when your hand is on the ground, one hand is on the ground, and it's kind of like a side bridge. So the side of your body is facing the ground. So that's the side support position. Now, when you're in that position, you've got your hand up overhead. So it's like your arms are in line like a cross, and you're holding the weight up overhead like that. When you bring your foot forward, so you're flexing your hip, that's such an important, hip flexion is such an undertrained and necessary movement that people need to work more.
Okay.
And that's working the psoas and the rectus femoris muscles. And those are known as the hip flexors, and they create hip flexion. Hip flexion is huge for so many things. If you want to get a stronger, deep squat, so to be able to come out of a really deep squat with strength, you need hip flexor strength. And the reason why is because at the bottom there, the hip flexors act as stabilizers for the pelvis and the spine. And they help to pull you into that deep squat position. And the thing is, most people don't train their hip flexors other than stretch them.
Right.
Like that's all we hear about is you got to stretch your hip flexors.
Totally.
Tight hips, you got to stretch your hip. We have to. These muscles don't exist as muscles in our body just to be stretched. Like we use them for so much: running, sprinting, kicking, all sorts of different things, but also for stability. They're huge stabilizers of the spine. So if they're weak, they're not working properly, people are not only limited in their movement, they're also often hurting because their spine isn't stable. Their lumbar spine's not stable.
Right.
So the hip flexors, people listen to this, you got to take this home. Work your hip flexors. You got to strengthen them.
Not just stretch.
Not just stretch. You got to strengthen them. It's huge. Same with the adductors. They're the other kind of bastard muscle of the body. People think, oh, we just have to stretch them, but all these muscles got to be strong and working properly.
Can I just sit in the adductor machine at the gym and spread my legs?
You could do that. I feel a little funny, but yeah, that's not necessarily the best machine.
No,
but yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do, and it's understanding the function of the adductors too. Like they have the name adductor, so you think, okay, they bring your leg closer to your body. So when your legs are spread apart, they bring your legs together. So they definitely do that. But in terms of functional performance, they're more about stabilization of the pelvis, and they're also adding hip extension force. So like when you're sprinting, the adductors are on big time. Mm-hmm. That's another reason why I love sprinting so much, because they work the body the way it's supposed to at high forces.
100%. I'm a big sprinting guy too, and I tell all of these guys they need to at least get a day of sprints in there, whatever type of sprint it is. But yeah, I mean, you had that amazing video, sprinting, like just breaking down how to sprint and the technique of sprinting. You have it on YouTube. I don't remember what it's called, but I love that video. I even actually put it into one of my sprinting programs because you break it down so well and teach it so well that, I literally took what you taught, went out to the park, sprinted, and felt like a million times better.
Where's my royalty checks, Funk?
Yeah, good call.
What's going on
here?
That's
a free program.
Oh, God damn.
Yeah, it's a free program.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like, I always say, like, if you're going to do something, you might as well learn how to do it. At least you don't have to do it perfectly. You're not everyone here is going to be an Olympic sprinter, but just learn some of the fundamentals of how to do it properly.
Yeah. So
sprinting is one thing. Like, I've been sprinting all my life, running all my life, but I was never really taught how to sprint. So I was like, okay, how would I sprint better if I were to sprint better? So I just figured out, okay, there's a few different tips, and then I shared those.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I'm. That's part of the transition to precision movement as well, away from the MMA stuff that I was doing for so long. Is there's just so much out there, and I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Like I like to play a lot of different sports and do everything. So I get really into things and analyzing them biomechanically and learning about them. Like now, I used to play hockey growing up, being Canadian here. That's what I did, and I'm a way better hockey player now because of all the stuff that I've learned. We've got YouTube, we've got all these resources online available, courses. I'm way better now than I was when I was younger, playing 6 days a week at AAA, like rep hockey.
Right.
Yeah, just because the coaching is so much better. People are sharing so much online and stuff. Like, it's awesome. Whatever you want to learn nowadays, it's
all online. It's all there. Yeah. It's at your fingertips. You don't need the Encyclopedia Britannica to come to the door.
Volume F, Roberts. This is what you need to know about Funk Roberts and his methods.
That's amazing. So you think? So I mean, I know already that that this is going to be, movement and mobility is going to be, a key portion of strength and conditioning. Do you agree with that? Especially in moving, you're going to see more fighters, more like UFC fighters and Bellator fighters, and using this kind of and including it in their training.
Oh, for sure. It's like I said, it's not just for staying healthy and injury free, but it helps with your performance as well.
For sure. Hey, do you have three stretches or exercises that these guys can take away? Like if there were three things that you can do, like shoulder exercise or knee exercise or whatever it is? Do you have those?
That's a good question. I would say, okay, that's a good question. For number one, because I've experienced this and I know a ton of fighters experience shoulder issues, specifically bursitis, like shoulder bursitis and impingement. Doing more passive hanging from the bar. So lots of passive hanging. So the way I like to do it is I set 10 minutes, and every minute on the minute, I hang for as long as I can. Okay. So my first set is like, it's pretty long, like it's almost a minute, or maybe past a minute.